Hey there, and thank you so much for joining me here at Homeschool with Brittany. We are in video 3 of a series that I am doing all about how to actually start your homeschooling program, how to establish your homeschool program in the state, as well as what you need to do in order to maintain that homeschool program. Video 1 was about the legal requirements that you need to meet in order to actually establish your homeschool program legally. Video number 2 was all about curriculum and how to choose an approach to educating your child or your children as they are going through this homeschooling journey. And today's video is all about record keeping. So, what files, what documents do you need to maintain in order to be able to continue homeschooling? So, one thing that I want to say before I get started is that every state is going to have their own requirements regarding record keeping and maintenance and the specific documents that they require and that process for submitting those documents on an annual basis or however often it is. So I definitely recommend that you go to both your state's Department of Education website and search for home education or homeschool requirements. And then I also recommend that you visit the website of your local school district and see what it is that you'll need to do in order to maintain that program through the district, if that is the way that your individual state works. So, with that being said, we're going to jump right into record keeping, and I am going to pretty much go through the different documents that, in my opinion, you need to make sure that you are keeping, maintaining, and updating regularly in order to not only fulfill your state's potential requirements for record keeping, but also to ensure that as your student grows through this process, their records and documents are growing with them. So, the first question is, why do we actually need to keep records? Why is this so important? Well, first of all, there is more than likely some legal requirement in your state that says that you must keep at a minimum a certain amount or type of documents in order to be able to both establish and maintain your home education program. So that's number one, because if you do not maintain these records, there is a chance that your state could terminate your homeschool program. And you don't want that to happen, especially as you're investing so much time, effort, and energy into this process and you're transitioning maybe from a traditional school setting to a homeschool setting. You don't want to go through all of that and then have your program terminated for failure to maintain records. So that's number one. Number two is there may be families out there, you may be one of them, who plans on sending their students off to college or university. And if that is the case, you will definitely need to keep documentation and maintain certain records in order to be able to get them through that application process. So we'll talk about that today as well, what that looks like. And then also, not every family who starts homeschooling actually finishes homeschooling through graduation. And if that is the case, you are going to need to be able to show some records, some documentation if your student is going to be transitioning back to a traditional school, whether it be a public school or a private school. So that is another reason why you need to make sure that you are maintaining records and updating them regularly. And then lastly, this is not a requirement, but I think about, the sentimental value of some of these records. So currently my daughter is in the 11th grade. She's a junior in high school, and we started homeschooling when she was in third grade. And, sometimes I look back on some of the work that she did when she was in elementary school, and there is a lot of sentimental value. There are a lot of memories that are attached to that when I think back on those times when we were just starting out, and even as she has progressed through our journey. And so you, just for that reason alone, may want to keep some of these records, some of these documents, some of these things that we'll be talking about today. So, what are the actual records that I suggest you keep, create, make sure that you keep a hold of as you're going through this homeschooling journey? Well, the very first one is going to be one that we talked about in the first video, which is your proof of registration as a home education family. And that could be your notice or letter of intent. It can be whatever documentation you needed to establish your homeschool program in your state, whatever that is called. So again, it's the paperwork that you filed with either your district or your state that established your homeschool program. You definitely want to hold on to that throughout and even after you end your homeschooling journey, because that is proof that your student was actually legally enrolled in a home education program and is not truant or just skipping school. So I talked a lot about that whole process in the first video. If you have not yet seen that one, please go back to that video and see what that process may look like, specifically if you are like me and are homeschooling in the state of Florida. And so the next document that you are going to want to keep, or record that you are going to want to make sure that you are maintaining and updating regularly, is an attendance record. And again, this is something that maybe you are going to be legally required to submit to your district or to your state. I'm not sure. We're not required to do that in Florida. However, I do keep a record of my daughter's attendance. The days that she goes to school are marked. The days that she does not go to school for whatever reason are marked as well. And so the way that I do it, I have a template that I use, and it has every single day, and there's a key. So one letter will be used for present or attending school. I've got some indicators for if she was sick, if we did a field trip or we're on vacation, that kind of thing. So all of that is documented. And at the end of the school year, I add up all of the days that she actually attended school, and I keep that as a part of the records. Again, some states, some school districts will require that your student attends school for a certain number of days. And if that is the case, then you will definitely need some attendance records and will want to use those in order to show proof that your student was actually in attendance. The next record that you are going to want to create and keep is some kind of weekly agenda or lesson plans if you are doing a parent-led program. We talked about parent-led programs and different approaches to curriculum and teaching your students in the last video of this series. So again, go back to that one if you want to learn more about that. But even if your student is doing something that's not parent-led, maybe they're doing a co-op and you're not creating the lesson plans yourself, you do at least, in my opinion, need to keep a weekly agenda that states what work your student completed or what courses your student worked in on any day of the week. So that is something that I do. I have a template for that as well. And it is created and updated weekly, and I just save every single version of it so that not only can the district know or the state know exactly what my daughter was learning or working in every day, but it's also good for me because otherwise I would not remember. And it's also great for her because it gives her exactly what it is that she needs to be working on any particular day at any particular time of the day, because mine is broken up not only daily but also hourly. So she'll know, looking at that agenda, that she needs to be working on this course at this time, that course at another time. And then I also put in activities, anything that we're doing as a family goes in on to that agenda as well, because it helps to keep all of us organized. So it serves multiple purposes. The next set of documentation that you are going to want to keep, and this is especially if you're doing some type of parent-led education, is a list of the curriculum that you're using, a list of resources that you're using, any textbooks. You want to document that for every single course, every single year. And this is important because not only will it help to show, again, the state or the district, if you have that legal requirement, what your student was learning and where that information was coming from, but it's also going to be great for you to keep track of what materials worked and what materials did not work. And sometimes that's hard to do if your student is taking multiple courses and has multiple textbooks or materials or resources for each of those courses. So when I think back to, let's say, when my daughter was doing language arts in elementary school, we had several different texts that we were using, several different books that we were reading from, the classics, that kind of thing. And if I did not keep a list and maintain a list of those resources, there's no way that I would now remember what it was that she learned, the textbooks or the books, the novels that we read. And so that is not only important to me, but it's an important part of maintaining and making sure that her educational journey has been well documented. So this doesn't have to be anything, elaborate, like literally just a Word document or a Google Doc from year to year, course to course of those textbooks, novels, supplemental materials, whatever it is that you used. To piggyback on that, you are going to want to have, especially as your students get older and get to that secondary, middle, and high school level, a list of course descriptions for each of the courses that your student is completing. And so, like I said, especially when it's the high school level courses, if they are not going to be completing these courses at a local high school or through some type of accredited program, you are, and you're maybe teaching the courses yourself, you are going to want to have something that shows specifically what it is that you taught and what the outcomes of that learning should have been. So if you're teaching, let's say, Algebra 1, how would you describe that course? What are some of the concepts that are going to be taught? And what will your student know by the end of Algebra 1? All of that would go in a course description. And I mentioned this, but this is going to be especially important for those students who are going to be applying for college, because depending on where you're going, some universities and colleges do a great job of accepting home education records for what they are, and you can just self-report and that's fine. Others are going to want you to prove that if you say that your student took Algebra 1, that they actually took what they would consider to be the equivalent of an Algebra 1 course taught in a traditional school. So definitely keep those records as well for any high school level course or any course maybe that your students took in middle school that may be worth high school credit. And the next thing that I have on my list, this is something that they give out in traditional schools that even though you don't necessarily need to have for yourself because you're keeping track of your students' progress, you may want to create for, again, legal requirements. And that is some type of report card or progress report. And so again, if you are going to potentially maybe transition back into a traditional school setting, having those progress reports, having that report card that you can show and show to the registrar at your student's new school is going to cut through a lot of that red tape, because again, They need to know what your student is learning. They want to be able to place your student in the correct course at the correct grade level. And if you are not able to show that documentation that your student not only took, like, we'll go back to Algebra 1, but not only took Algebra 1, but the level of Algebra 1 that you taught is equivalent to what they teach. If you're not able to prove that, then they may not accept that credit for what it is and what it should be. So definitely have some type of report card, progress report, for even if it's just for yourself. The next set of documents that you are going to want to create and update regularly, at least on a semester basis, is going to be your students' transcripts. And you are going to want to have 3 different versions of this transcript depending on when you start and finish your students' homeschooling journey. So that first version is going to be the elementary school version that will have all of the elementary school courses that your student has taken. It can be, if they started off in a traditional school, you can add those courses as well, in addition to the courses that they are taking as a home education student. And if any grades, final grades are assigned for those courses, you can definitely put them on that transcript. However, you don't have to assign a grade if you really don't have any intentions of transitioning back to or transitioning to a traditional school later on. But if there's a chance that your student is going to be transitioning to a either public or private school, they are going to want to see those records and that transcript, and they probably are going to want to see a grade attached to each of those classes, particularly as you get into those later elementary years. And so the second version of your transcript is going to be for those middle school students. And so this is going to be a separate set of courses once you get into the secondary side of schooling. And again, you'll just want to create a transcript for all of the courses that your student has taken. And by this time, there pretty much is going to be, unless you're really into unschooling, an expectation that there is a final grade attached for every course, whether it be a semester-long course or an annual course. There should be some type of grade attached to that. And the last version, of course, is going to be the high school version. This high school version of your transcript is going to include all of the courses your student took as a high schooler, so grades 9 through 12. It is also going to include any courses your student took in middle school that were at the high school level. So if your student took an advanced math, maybe geometry, or they started on their high school sciences while they were in middle school, these courses go on that high school transcript as well. Specifically for that high school transcript, you are going to make sure that you not only indicate the name of the course, but also the level of the course. Was it a general course? Was it honors? Was it AP? Was it a dual enrollment course that your student completed at a college or university? This is going to be important for those students who are going to be applying for admissions to colleges and universities, because they weight those courses differently depending on the level. So again, there's going to be a difference in their eyes between an honors level English and an AP English course. So just make sure that on your transcript, the level of the course is indicated. You also are going to want to indicate the amount of credit that they received for the course. So was it a half credit course or was it a full 1 credit course? Those things matter as well. And so just make sure that you are indicating the credit amount that was given for each individual course. And then you'll also want to have a way to be able to calculate their GPA or grade point average when we're looking at this high school transcript. So you'll want to calculate an unweighted GPA which is without giving value to the different levels of courses. That includes the AP, the honors, just an unweighted GPA without that extra weight. And then you'll want to have a weighted GPA, which includes the weight that's given for the rigor of these higher level courses. So definitely make sure that you do that. And again, you're going to want to update this pretty regularly. So at least on a semester basis. But if if you're doing it on an annual basis, that works as well. What I do is every time my daughter completes a course, I am updating that transcript. And for us, this is going to be important in the next coming months as she gets ready to apply to colleges, because she'll be enrolled in courses and those courses will go on her transcript. However, she won't yet have a grade for those courses senior year while she's applying for colleges. So I want to make sure not only are all of the courses that she's actually completed and received a grade for on that transcript, but also senior year, the courses that she's enrolled in will go on that transcript, even though she will not have received a grade for them because they will be in progress. So the transcripts are going to be super important for your student, particularly as they are getting ready to apply for college, university, if that is what you want them to do. And you'll also want to have and maintain a list of any extracurricular activities your student has been involved in, any awards that they've received, any achievements that they've been able to undergo or maintain. That's going to be important as well, because we're thinking now about college admissions. We're thinking about how to differentiate your student from all of the other students who are applying to college at the same time and are in that same graduating class. So just keep a list, maintain a list of awards, recognitions, achievements. And this is important. It's important that you update this regularly as well, because if you're anything like me, you probably have forgotten some of these things along the way. And so you'll want to make sure that you take a moment to stop, reflect on everything that your student has accomplished as they have homeschooled and just as they've been a student, and whether or not it was related to your homeschooling or not, put that on your list of achievements and awards for your student, because this will matter later on. I also want you to think about creating a resume for your student, and this can be for two different purposes. Number one, again, if your student is going to be applying for college, this will be important because it's going to, again, help you not only differentiate your student from the others, but it's going to give you a place to put and summarize all of this information into one document. So your resume, their resume, will include their schooling, their academic and other achievements, their extracurricular activities, volunteer opportunities that they have been engaged in, any work experience that they have, but also those interests and hobbies, their GPA, any languages learned. All of that is going to go onto that resume so that you can have just a clear indication of what your student has been up to throughout their journey, their educational journey. And then, of course, not every student is going to be applying for college. Some students are going to go straight into the workforce, and we all know that a resume will be necessary for those purposes. So you'll want to basically do the same thing, but instead of making it more focused on education and college admissions, make it focused towards applying for actual real world jobs and what those employers are going to be looking for. So a resume, I would definitely say, go ahead and start to think about, if your student is younger, what you want that to look like, what your students' goals are as far as outcomes once they graduate, and then start to work on that little by little. And the last three that I will talk about are all going to be things that you'll probably need to use to legally maintain your home education program. Again, they may be state specific, but the first one is a portfolio. So many states do require that you submit a portfolio, maybe on an annual basis, to prove what it is that your student has learned over time throughout the course of their homeschooling journey. And so this portfolio, if you have been creating documents, the documents that I've been discussing, all of those documents are going in your portfolio. So your attendance records, transcripts, resume, your agendas, all of that will go in your portfolio. In addition to that documentation, you will also want to include some student samples. So maybe an essay that was written, a research paper that was completed. If your student is taking science, some lab reports, some lab work that they've done, anything that is of significance or that showcases the level of work, the rigor of work that they have completed would be great to go into a portfolio. And again, because this portfolio will need to be updated on an annual basis, you'll want to make sure that you are collecting these documents and this evidence throughout the year. Do not wait until the last minute to think about a portfolio and then realize you don't have good representations of your students' work. Be mindful of what it is that they're doing throughout the year and what pieces you can pull and add to your students' portfolio. You are also going to want to have any annual evaluation paperwork that you need to submit to your county or to your state. Those records, probably there's going to be a form that they want you to use. If you don't have to use a specific form and can create one on your own, make sure that you do that, but make sure that it includes all of the required information. And that is going to be something that, again, you're going to submit to your county, your school district, your state, whatever the case may be, on an annual basis or whatever their requirement is. And then lastly, if you at some point are going to be terminating your home education program, whether it's because your student graduates from high school, which, yay, that is going to be awesome, or if they transition back to a traditional school, then you are going to want to have some type of notice or letter of termination on file. And that will be what ends your home education program with the district or with the state, but it is also going to be something that you want to have in your records as well to indicate that the home education program did end. This was the termination date. These are our plans after terminating home education. My student has graduated and will go off to college, or they are enrolling in this program or that school, whatever the case may be. All right, so those are the documents that, in my opinion, you should include when it comes to record keeping, that you should either create or definitely maintain over time. Your next question may be, well, once I have all of this documentation, how long do I need to keep this? For how long do I need to store these documents, either as my student is continuing to homeschool, or if I do terminate a home education program, do I still need to keep this portfolio and all of this work, all of these records that I've been keeping thus far? The answer to that is going to be pretty much twofold. Number one, it depends on your state. What are their requirements for record keeping? Here in Florida, you have to keep documents for at least 2 years. So they can at any point ask for your records and documentations for the past 2 years if they so choose. That is basically the statute of limitation here in Florida. In your state, it may be different. So just be aware of what the state requirements are for your state in your area. And the second part of that is basically, I would say, keep those documents for as long as it makes sense. Um, and really, whenever your student transitions from one, not grade level to the next, but from one level of education to the next, then maybe that would be a time for you to consider, maybe discarding some of this documentation. So, what I mean by that is when your student transitions from elementary school to middle school, at some point they will no longer need those elementary school records. Again, unless it's required legally or you're keeping them for sentimental value. Once that student transitions on to the next level of education, you're probably no longer going to need that elementary school documentation. Same thing with high school. Once your middle schooler goes on to high school, do you really need to keep every single little piece of paper from middle school? Probably not. As long as you've met your requirements, your legal requirements for your state, keep whatever you want to keep, and then the rest you can get rid of. Once your student graduates from high school or transitions to maybe a different school, then same thing applies. You're going to want to keep those documents that are required by law for however long they state you need to keep them. But other than that, get rid of what you don't want or don't need. Now, me personally, I tend to, I am pretty much a minimalist by design. So I don't like to have a lot of excessive paperwork, unnecessary paperwork around. But there are some things that I will probably always keep, and that's going to be transcripts, those attendance records, anything where I feel like somehow, some way, someone could ask me for them, and I need to show and prove that my daughter was actually really engaged in her schoolwork while she was a home education student, and we weren't just slacking off. I'll probably keep all of those, especially because they are I store all of her documents electronically, so on my computer. Then I'll probably just keep those anyways because there really is no point in trashing them. But I can definitely tell you that as a junior, my daughter's now a junior, I don't have too much of her student samples and work samples from elementary school, except for the things that I kept for sentimental value. The rest of that is long gone because I just don't need it. And so I did get rid of some of those things. But again, it's up to you. It's up to your state to dictate how long you'll need to keep some of that, some of the records for, and then you keep what you want and get rid of what you don't outside of that. So that is it for record keeping. Thank you so much for sticking with me if you've made it this far. I really appreciate it. I so look forward to seeing you in the next video. And until then, happy homeschooling.